What's an actual environmental importance that mosquitoes have aside from drinking our bloods and spreading disease? Feeding fish. Mosquitoes are the only natural pollinators of cocoa. No mosquitoes, no chocolate. Feeding fish, birds, and various other insects. Now what use are ticks for would be a better question. Most mosquitoes actually feed on nectar, so they act as pollinators, as well as being a food source for many other animals. Food for other creatures. And because they feed on nutrient-rich blood, they can a bit more caloric than most bugs their size. The food chain. Mosquitoes are eaten by a range of other organisms that are of more significant environmental importance. The ecosystem is so delicately balanced that removing one species can have quite far-reaching consequences. What's harder, being constantly alone or being around people? Being around people. It gets overwhelming sometimes. One without the possibility of the other really fucking sucks. I don't know about constantly alone, but I prefer solitude more often than being around people. Being around people. Both can be equally as unhealthy, but I'd say constantly around people, that's exhausting. For me, definitely being around people. I just love my peace and quiet. I love being home, having time for me, enjoying my quiet time, my peace. It's the best feeling in the world. I hate being alone. When I'm tired and need a break, I go out and find the busiest place I can find and just hang out. Being around people. I'd rather be around people. I'm more of an outgoing type of person. Being without people will be hard for me. What's a perverted use of a seemingly vanilla superpower? Just imagine how fast the Flash can vibrate. Controlling water seems the most open to abuse. Shrinking, for example Ant-Man. There are several comics where Ant-Man just shrinks down and gets on a woman while she's showering. Shape-shifting. Need I say more? If you could turn invisible and walk through walls, you could leave your wife flowers and a touching love letter and she'd never notice you doing it. You'll find out at orgasm. Mind control. Need I say more? Mind reading. Hear all those dirty thoughts that go through people's minds when they are bored. Super hearing. Can hear anyone masturbating no matter where you are. Super sight. Don't need the telescope. There was this Misfits, about low-life PPL getting powers and turning into, well, not good guys. Just not bad guys. Thus was a story in an episode one of the actual bad guys had the ability to control lactose. Shows him doing little tricks, like creamers jumping between cups. Then he shows what he can really do, and like freezes the lactose inside of someone's kidney and straight up killing them. Great show. 8/10 would recommend. What's one old thing pre-2000s you want to bring back to now? Fun fast food structures. They've turned all but one McDonald's in my town into some industrial gray building. The same for all the Pizza Huts and a few other places. Meeting someone at the gate when their flight landed. I love that growing up, but my kids never got to experience it. There was something magical about seeing that person you were waiting on walk out. Buying a house for approximately 2x your yearly salary, comfortable airline seating, dressing like you don't give a shit, not expecting to be reachable at all when on vacation. Internet before social media. The variety of different sites we used. Software to own, not rent. Now, not only you have to pay something every month, but features are added, removed, or changed. I have to keep learning new ways of doing the same task. Which famous person shouldn't be famous? Nick Avocado. Island Boys, rolling eyes face. Chris Brown should have been knocked down more pegs than he has been. People that use their fame to take advantage of their fans. First that come to my mind are Jared Leto, Ezra Miller, Shane Dawson, and Onision. Trisha Paytas. Self-proclaimed social influencers. Wendy Williams. She's just a bully with a daytime TV show. Edit. Without a daytime TV show, it was cancelled. Dreams do come true. Jake Paul. Every single school shooter stop printing their names in the media. The Catch Me Outside girl. Casey Anthony. Bob Ross. He should be ultra famous instead of just famous. Why would I further publicize his name? Putting his name on Reddit so people will Google him and make him a little more famous? No. Screw that guy. Nobody should ever say his name again. That's my position. Which is the greatest movie fight scene of all time? Ripley in The Power Loader vs. Alien Queen in Aliens. The Black Knight in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Subway fight scene in the first Matrix. At the time it was completely revolutionary and changed modern cinema with bullet time. Suddenly and sadly every action film was using it and it quickly became a bit of a trope. Kung Fu Hustle. The entire thing, the Princess Bride sword fight between the Man in Black and Inigo Montoya is always a classic. There is something you should know. I am not left-handed. Ip Man vs 10 black belts from the movie Ip Man. They Live. The alley fight scene. Old Boy. Troy. Hector vs Achilles. Gasoline fight in Zoolander. The Raid 1 last scene. The Raid 2 kitchen scene. What's your never spoken of family secret? 1. My dad cheated on my mom with my aunt. Not my aunt by blood, but my uncle's wife. My parents are still happily married, but my uncle and aunt divorced after everything came out. Two different aunts stole my uncle's credit card and ruined his credit for 10 years. She also served time for stealing over $30,000 from when she worked as a bank teller. Had no idea until my mom told me a few months ago. My grandfather owned a wildly successful paint store. That was a front for arms drug dealing. That my mom and my stepfather are cousins. They have 2 kids that are my siblings. We didn't talk about it, but everyone knows, and laughs when they remember the wedding. The photographer called the brothers and sisters of the bride and the groom for a photo, and then he said, "Now, the cousins of the bride and the groom," and literally no one moves. They always wheeze when they remember the photographer's face. Who is the greatest voice actor of all time? Mel Blanc. I feel like Seth MacFarlane is underrated. Dude can have a full-blown conversation between his characters without skipping a beat. This is tough to answer. I think you could make a strong argument that the greatest voice performance of all time was Robin Williams in Aladdin. But factoring in range of voices, I think you'd have to go with Mel Blanc. Maybe Frank Welker or Jim Cummings, but, personally I think, Blanc could do so many voices with such varied energy, that I'd have to say him. Phil Hartman. You may remember him from voices such as Troy McClure or Lionel Hutz. This question is not really possible to answer. Steve Bloom, H. John Benjamin, and J.K. Simmons are great examples of voice actors who are iconic and very easily recognizable, but they are their own voice. Mark Hamill is an example of someone who can do many character voices, but is often unrecognizable. He has voiced nearly 400 characters. You're now named Lil plus the object to your left. What's your name? Lil Teacup, which is surprisingly apt UK rapper name. First single 2 Sugars. Lil Derek from accounting. Lil NyQuil. I feel like some Gen Z TikTok rapper already took this name. Lil Refrigerator. Mini Fridge for short. Lil Pillow. Lil Remote. Lil Wall. Lil Toilet Paper Roll. Lil Annual Financial Report as at December 31st, 2021. Lil Chair. Lil Kitten. Did this with my co-workers and the names are Lil Laundry Basket Me, Lil Light Switch, and Lil Wall. Lil Lock. Lil Forklift. Lil Girlfriend. Lil Half-Height PCI slot bracket for an Intel X520DA210G SFP network card. Lil Ibuprofen. You take a whiff and it takes you back years. What is that smell? That weird bleachy smell every elementary school has as soon as you step in the door. Play-Doh. Musty basement. My grandparents' house had an old fridge that always had pop in the basement. Whenever I visited I would go down there to get a can. Even though it was a scary old basement, the pop was worth it. Fresh cut grass. Reminds me of my childhood. Clinique Happy. Takes me back to my first love. Vinyl of a floaty for water. Love that vinyl smell. Estee Lauder Youth Dew perfume reminds me so much of my deceased grandmother. I've been such a voracious reader since I was a kid. Now it's really inconvenient for me to purchase, store, and carry around paper books, so I mostly read e-books nowadays. Whenever I come to my parents' house and open the books from my childhood, the smell really takes me back to those days when there would be storms and the power would be out, so I would bundle up in my blanket and read Harry Potter by the light of my flashlight. Makes me feel like I'm there with him exploring Hogwarts Castle under the cloak. Why don't we call countries the name they call themselves? Largely, we do. There's a video about this. I just learned earlier today, while listening to a podcast, that Japan is pronounced differently in native tongue than it is in English. I mean, have fun with Österreich. If you're talking about Americans, we don't even call ourselves by our own country, United States. Why Canadians and Mexicans don't call us on that more often, I'm not sure. Lol. Yeah. Stop calling us Dutch, just call us Netherlanders. It makes more sense. People won't be able to pronounce it. Country names are pretty well understood and recognized. What's problematic is 1. USA states. When you see Georgia in address on international transaction, you'd assume it's in Georgia, not in USA. And when you see eel, you'd assume it's Israel, not USA. Most countries use addresses formatted as postcode city, country or postcode city, so you can see how confusing US addresses can be too. City names. The Polish name for Milan is Mediolan, which means absolutely nothing, maybe half media half land XD. And the Icelandic word for Warsaw is Varsja, which means the river of character from Warsaw folklore. Redditors who know someone who is or are blind and have done psychedelics, what was their trip like? I had a blind since birth patient who was a regular LSD user, spoke of auditory hallucinations and having touch-like sensation from music sometimes overwhelming, developed a taste for fast-paced classical music, said he had no visual effects since he couldn't see and doesn't have a perspective what is seeing like. I have an ex who lost an eye, and when we tripped she kept telling me it was like she was catching something in her peripheral vision but on the side where her eye was missing. She kept whipping her head around and saying, "What is that?" Really weird sensation apparently. She didn't really like it. One of my training partners became blind later in life. I had mentioned being interested in doing shrooms. He said, Take it from a blind guy, do acid instead. Reddit: how do you like your coffee? Black, like my lungs. Like I like my women. I don't like coffee. Black, light roast. Black, Turkish. In a mug. Black as the last banana. Black, no sugar. Black, but gourmet. I like my coffee crisp. Black, just like my metal. How I like my women: white and hot. I'm a sucker for a hazelnut latte. Latte with a caramel shot. My coffee is honestly 90 coffee and 10 milk or cream. Yet to find a coffee I like, to be honest, and I've tried a few different kinds. Same issue with tea, to be honest. Just never got a taste for it. Iced with a little bit of flavored cream or vanilla, caramel, or pumpkin. Like my women hot, black and nasty. Like my men hot and black. What was the worst day of your life? That's a tough one. Once at 17 I came home to all my stuff in garbage bags on the side of the road. Found out that a month before I was to leave for college, my mother, whose rented 2-bedroom apartment I was living in, was moving. I was homeless for 6 weeks, then went off to college. Finding out my first GF cheated on me shattered my worldview because I was so in love, and had 100 trust. I've never fully recovered from it. Finding out that both parents, and my older brother, all had cancer in the space of about 6 hours. It was just so awful. X200B: by pure coincidence, all 3 of them had hospital appointments that day, and the hits just kept on coming. The worst part about it was at that time the only information on all 3 was that there was cancer, but we didn't know how bad it was or what the prognosis was for any of them. X200B: it was the day before Christmas Eve. X200B: that was 5 years ago. All 3 are still with us, thank goodness, but it was an awful Christmas that year because we then had to wait several weeks for all 3 of them to get additional scan surgery and get more information. The mind went to some very dark places, especially that New Year's. All I kept think was, will all 3 of them still be here next New Year's night? Wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Knocked a year off my own life.